Hey 2D Foundation, Sven here. So you've made your grid, you've made your digital reference. Now your next step is to start drawing. So this video is going to go over some helpful tips on how to make your drawing with better proportions and to get your details more exact. So you already know how to do this. This is just a short video on how to make it better. All right, now that you have your grid done and your digital reference done, you are going to take things from your digital reference and put it in your grid. So those of you who are right-handed are going to start in the top left-hand corner so that you don't smudge everything underneath your hand. Those of you who are left-handed are going to start in the top right-hand corner so you don't smudge things underneath your hand. Here are a couple other reminders. Start with your first box, fill in everything from that box, and then move on to the next box in the same row, and then the next box in the same row, and the next box in the same row. So complete one row, and then move on to the next row, and then move on to the next row. So you're not filling in something that is the contour that goes throughout your entire paper and then back up. You're filling in everything from one box at a time. Let me give you some tips on how to make this easier. The great thing about working digitally is you can zoom in to focus on a particular box so that you're only paying attention to one box at a time. Then you can move on to the next box. This is going to help you particularly when you're in very complicated boxes or boxes in the middle. Something else that can help is putting an X on the box in your digital reference. But if you put an X in your digital reference, you also need to add that to your drawing. All right, so let me show you how to utilize this box. Let's pretend I had everything else filled in. We're just focused on this one box and our image up here to the left. So I know that her nose is right about in this area here. So I'm just going to start roughing this out so I can get some general shaping in here. And her mouth comes in and creates this tiny little triangle here. So think about your negative space and how the shape of the negative space is similar to the shape of the negative space on your reference image. And her eyes don't touch the center line. So I have to think about how high it is on this border line here. It's not at center. That's about where her eyebrow is. So I can mark that as where her eyebrow is, and her eyebrow angles in towards the center of the space. And then her eye angles towards her eyebrow. You can see how light I'm drawing. And it almost creates a point here at the outside, but it scoops down and back up. And it doesn't touch the center line, remember that cross line that we made. And her other line is on the center line, or her other eye is on the center line. I think I made this eye out, or this eyebrow out a little too far. Problem with not having erasers. You always have to look for them. So then the other eyebrow is right about here and then curves just slightly over that center line. And then the other eye is just under. And she's got massive eyelashes, lucky kid. So I'm just gonna add those in there. And now we're gonna focus a little bit on the nose and getting the nose added in, thinking about the space between this line and where the nose is, and that nostril fold, and the space between the edge of the nostril fold and my center line. It's also a little angle in that creates the shadow. Her nose dips down, but it doesn't do that at the center line here. It's before that. and then comes out and then back up. So it's off center based off of this angled line here. Okay, so that's some keynotes for shadows there, these lines here. And she's got this crazy wisp of a hair that comes in and swoops across. And then more that come this way and come in towards that center point. And some that cross from the edge across her eye, but does not go into that top triangle. Let's work on her lips down here. They're very narrow. They're mostly shadowed spaces. So it's the top of her upper lip, and then there are two shadows. There's a dark shadow that comes into this side triangle, and then there is a tiny little shadow down here at the bottom, and then the side of her face. Well, I don't think I left enough room for the side of her face. So I'm going to have to adjust a lot of things up because there's this tiny little triangle that needs to make the side of her face, and the side of her face needs to connect up here. So yes, that looks wrong. So when you adjust something, another thing in your sketch is probably going to end up needing to be adjusted as well. So take a look at how things move and how things need to be added and changed as you're going. Be ready for adjustments because they're going to need to happen. And don't really shade anything in here because although I'm adding those darker values, you don't want to shade anything in. You want to keep everything really light so that when you shade it with colored pencil, you can see where those shadows are, where the highlights are, and you could even draw in, like there's a highlight down the center of her nose here. There's a highlight on the top of her eyebrow. Her eyebrow is darker. It's called mapping out your highlights and shadows. That's another tip that will help you draw this properly, is mapping out those highlights and those shadows. Okay, so it's super light, but you can see everything that's there. Everything that's in the box to the top left is now in my drawing, at least slightly. So the shapes are there, the lines are there, they're in the correct spots. I know how to do my highlights and shadows because I have mapped them out. This is my box, and I can move on to the next one. And if I need to add an X into the next one, then I have the ability to do that. All right, 2D Foundations, I think the biggest piece of advice I could give you is to make sure that the objects in your drawing are lining up with the grid in the same spots as the objects in your photo, and how those objects line up with the grid that you have created. So take a look at your photo, take a look at your drawing, take a look at your photo, and then adjust your drawing, because I am sure there are things that will need subtle tweaks. And subtle tweaks will make all of the difference and really show that you care about your craftsmanship. Mrs. Sobolewski and I are so excited to see what you come up with and to see how these drawings come out. But please remember, don't overtask yourself. You can creatively edit things out and simplify things. So think about what is necessary and think about what you can simplify and make a really cool art piece. We're here to help you if you need it. Please just ask. That's what we're here for. All right, everyone, have fun with this.